Hello everyone. In this video, we will go through the time value of money worksheet, the TVM worksheet of the BA2 Plus calculator. We will work on the problems involving compound interest with a single payment. Let's take a look at the TVM worksheet. There are 5 primary keys corresponds to the time value of money worksheet. They are respectively the button N, denoting the number of compounding periods. IY denotes the nominal interest rate per year. PV is the present value or the principal. And then the fourth one is PMT, the payment amount, the payment other than the principal. So for problems involving compound interest with only a single payment, PMT always equals 0. And then the last key is the key FV, denotes future value or the maturity value. When we key in the value for PV or FV, the sign is important. For cash outflow, if you need to take out money, the value is a negative number. If you receive money, this is a cash inflow, then the value is a positive number. Other than that, we need to key in the information of the frequency. So we have the frequency worksheet. To activate the frequency worksheet, we press the second key and then PY. PY is the second function of the IY button. So key in second and then PY. We get to the frequency worksheet. There are 2 variables. PY denotes the number of payments per year, and CY denotes the number of compounding periods per year. For problems involving compound interest with single payment, we are only interested in the value for CY, the number of compounding periods per year. However, when we do the input, we will input the value as PY because PY equals CY for the problems involving only a single payment. And the calculator will automatically set the value of CY the same as the one we input for PY. So we input the value for PY and CY we will automatically set to that value we enter. Let's take a look at an example. Find the accumulated value for $5,000 at the end of 4 years, invested at 9% compounded monthly. Let's take a look at the corresponding variables, PY and CY. The interest rate is compounded monthly, so the value is 12. We input 12 for PY, and CY will be automatically set at 12. And then the 5 key of the TVM worksheet, the value N, the total number of compounding periods. Here the interest rate is compounded monthly. The period is 4 years. So altogether, N equals 4 times 12, which is 48. And IY is the nominal rate, which is 9%. We input 9. PV is the present value. In this problem, this is 5,000, but we need to take out the money to make a deposit. So this $5,000, we will input as negative 5,000. And then PMT equals 0. We need to get the variable FV. Let's activate the frequency worksheet to input the variable PY and CY. Press the second key and then PY. PY equals 12. So we enter 12 and then enter. For PY, press the down arrow key to confirm that CY is set equals 12. And then we can quit the frequency worksheet by pressing second and then quit. Quit is the second function over the CPT button. And then we can input the variable of the TVM worksheet. N equals 48. Before we do any input, clear the previous memory. So by pressing the second key and then clear TVM, this is the second function over the FV button. And then clear the memory and input 48 for N. So for this worksheet, we will get the number 48 first and then press the corresponding variable, in this case, N. And then IY equals 9. So key in 9 and then the button IY. And then PV equals negative 5,000. Enter the number first, 5,000. If you need the negative sign, press the plus or minus button. We get negative 5,000 and then press the button PV to input this variable. And then PMT equals 0. Key in 0 and then PMT. For the variable FV, we need to compute it. So we simply press CPT and then the button FV. Press the CPT button and then FV. We get the answer. FV is positive. That means we are receiving money. So if we deposit $5,000 at the end of 4 years at interest rate 9% compounded monthly, the future value is $7,157.03. Let's take a look at the next example. You borrow $2,500 and agree to repay the loan in 1.5 years. How much should you pay if interest is charged at 6.5% compounded quarterly? The frequencies, PY and CY. The interest rate is compounded quarterly, so PY and CY equal 4. The value of N, the total number of compounding period. Altogether, the duration is 1.5 years. Interest rate is compounded quarterly. So the total number of compounding period is 1.5 times 4, which is 6. And then IY, the nominal interest rate is 6.5. PV is the amount of money you borrow, 2,500. You borrow the money, that means you receive the money at the time of your borrowing. So this is a cash inflow. So PV is positive 2,500. PMT equals 0. We need to get the value of FV. Activate the frequency worksheet by pressing the second key and then PY. PY equals 4. So enter 4 and then press the enter button. Press the down arrow key to confirm that CY equals 4 as well. Once this is confirmed, we can quit the frequency worksheet by pressing second and then quit. Key in the value for N. First, clear the memory of the TVM worksheet by pressing second and then clear TVM. N equals 6. So key in 6 and then the button N. IY 6.5, 6.5, and then the IY button. PV 2,500. Key in the number and then the button PV. PMT is 0. So key in 0 and then the PMT button. We need to get the value for FV. So compute and then FV. Here FV is a negative number. That means this is the amount of money we need to take out. We need to repay the loan. So by the time at the end of the 1.5 years duration, we need to repay the loan for the amount $2,753.87. The next example. Find the principal that will accumulate to $10,000 in 5 years at 3.25% compounded semi-annually. The frequencies PY and CY equal to the interest rate is compounded semi-annually. And then N, the total number of compounding period, 5 years, interest rate compound semi-annually, so altogether 10 compounding periods. IY, the nominal rate, 3.25. PV is the variable we need to compute. PMT, 0. And FV is $10,000. Key into the calculator, the frequency worksheet, PY and CY equal 2. So do the input for PY, confirm CY also equals 2, and then we can quit the frequency worksheet. Clear the TVM worksheet and enter the variables accordingly. N equals 10, so key in 10, and then N. IY 3.25, 3.25 IY. We skip PV because we need to compute it. Key in 0 for PMT, and then 10,000 for FV. And then we can compute PV by pressing CPT and then PV. PV is a negative value. That means we need to take out the money. This is the amount we need to deposit in order to accumulate to $10,000 in 5 years. So the answer is $8,511.27. The next example. You took out a personal loan from a bank. The loan amount was $14,500, and you repaid a total of $16,200 over the course of 15 months. What was the monthly compound interest rate on your personal loan from the bank? The frequencies. The interest rate is compounded monthly. PY and CY equals 12. N equals 15. 15 months. Interest rate is compounded monthly. So altogether, the total number of compounding period is 15. IY, we need to compute it. PV, 14,500. This is the loan amount. we receive this amount at the time of the borrowing. PMT 0 and FV negative 16,200. We need to repay it. This is a cash outflow. Solve it using the TVM worksheet. Activate the frequency worksheet. Enter 12 for the frequencies. And then we can quit the frequency worksheet after the input. And then clear the TVM worksheet. Enter 15 for N. And then 14,500 for PV. 0 for PMT. 16,200 with a negative sign as FV. And then we can compute IY. So the interest rate is 8.9019%, but this is the nominal rate. We need to include the frequency. We key in PY or CY as 12, indicating the interest rate is compounded monthly. So this answer, 8.9019%, is compounded monthly. Let's take a look at another example. If $25,000 is invested at 8.5% compounded quarterly and has accumulated to $27,771.55, for how long does it have been invested? The frequencies, CY and PY equal 4. The interest rate is compounded quarterly. N is the total number of compounding periods. This is asked in the question. For how long does it have been invested? IY 8.5. PV negative 25,000. 0 for PMT. And FV is the $27,771.55. Get to the calculator, enter the frequencies. 4 for PY and CY. And then we need to compute N. So enter IY, 8.5. PV, negative 25,000. Zero for PMT. And FV, 27,771.55. And then we can compute the value for N. We get N equals 5. What is the time unit? The time unit will be the same as the compounding frequency. Here, CY equals 4, or from the question, the interest rate is compounded quarterly. So the unit for N is quarters. The next example. You borrowed $8,000 for 2 years with 10% compound semi-annually in the first year and 8% compound quarterly in the second year. What is the amount of the loan by the end of the second year? In this example, the interest rate is not a constant. So somehow we need to perform 2 steps in order to get the final answer. Let's construct a timeline to illustrate the money flow in the example. At time 0, you borrowed $8,000. And then in the first year, the interest rate is 10% compound semi-annually. This is the first time segment. And then in the second year, starting from the end of year 1 to the end of year 2, the interest rate is 8% compound quarterly. So to solve this problem, we will start with the $8,000, get the future value at the end of year 1, take this number, and then get the future value at the end of year 2. So for the first time segment, the frequency is 2. The interest rate is compound semi-annually. And then in this first year, the number of compounding period is 2, the value for n. IY is 10. PV is the $8,000. 0 for PMT, and we need to compute the FV. This value is the FV at the end of year 1. Let's do the calculation. The frequencies, 2, and then the input for the TVM worksheet, 2 for n. IY is 10. PV 8,000. 0 for PMT, and then compute the variable FV. We get 8,820. And then we can move on to the second time segment. For the second time segment, this value 8,820 corresponds to the present value. So in case we forget this number, on the calculator, we will input this value first. So here we have negative 8,820. Get rid of the negative sign by pressing the plus or minus button, and then key in this number as PV. So I press PV. So now I input the variable PV, and then get back to the remaining variables. In the second time segment, the interest rate is 8% compound quarterly. So PY and CY is 4. And then N equals 4. The total number of compounding period in the second year. And then IY is 8, PMT 0, and we need to get FV. Do not clear any memories in the calculator because we have already input the value for PV. Activate the frequency worksheet. The number is now 4. Do the input. And then key in the value for N. N is 4. IY is 8. we have inputted the value of PV, and then PMT is 0. To confirm the value of PV or any other variable, we can press the recall button. The recall button is RCL, recall, and then press PV to confirm that PV equals 8,820. And then we can compute FV. We get the answer, $9,547.05. This is the amount of the loan by the end of the second year. Let's take a look at the next example. Emma wants to save $55,000 for a down payment on a property in 5 years. If she can place her money today in an investment that will earn 6.55% compounded monthly in the first 3 years, followed by 7.25% compounded quarterly for the remaining years, how much money does she need to invest today? Again, the interest rate is not a constant. Let's construct the timeline, time 0, and then by the end of year 3, and then by the end of year 5. The $55,000 is the amount Emma wants by the end of year 5. So we start from this time point. And then between the end of year 3 and the end of year 5, the interest rate is 7.25% compounded quarterly. So from this, we will get the present value as of the end of year 3. And then move this amount of money back as of today's money. This is the amount she needs to invest today. And this is the second time segment. In this second time segment, the interest rate is 6.55% compounded monthly. So we are doing the calculation backward in time. The first time segment, the interest rate is 7.25% compounded quarterly. So PY and CY is 4. N equals 8. The duration is 2 years. The compounding frequency is compounded quarterly. So altogether, 8 compounding period in this time segment. IY 7.25. We need to compute PV. PMT is 0. And FV is the $55,000. Key in the variables into the calculator. PY and CY is 4. And then N equals 8. IY equals 7.25. PMT is 0. FV 55,000. Compute the present value. We get this amount. This is the equivalent amount of money at the end of year 3, $47,638.04. And we need to move this money backward in time for 3 years. So this amount that we have computed is the future value in this second time segment. So key in this number as FV, get rid of the negative sign by pressing the plus or minus button. This is the value for FV. And then the other variables, PY and CY are 12. Interest rate is compounded monthly. And then N, 36. Interest rate compounded monthly for 3 years. 3 times 12, 36. IY, 6.55. We need to get the PV and 0 for the PMT. Key in the remaining variables into the calculator, the frequencies. 12. And then 36 for N. IY, 6.55. 0 for PMT. And we can recall the value of FV, the RCL button, and then FV to confirm this is the correct value we have entered. Compute PV. We get the answer. This is the amount Emma needs to invest today. That's it for today's video. Thank you for watching and see you in the next video.